This video is for the Chapter 11, Assignment Number 1 lesson on circumference, arc length, and perimeter topic for Chapter 11. And we're going to begin by doing a little bit of work with simplifying expressions that involve pi and using a calculator to get the decimal approximation. So looking at the first problem, it says that x is equal to 1/2 of 8 pi plus 2 times 3 squared. So x is equal to half of 8 pi is 4 pi, and 2 plus 3 squared will be 2 times 9. And so the exact form of the answer is 4 pi plus 18. Fill that in here. Then the decimal approximation is what you get if you type that into a calculator. And on this calculator, the keys would be 4, and then you'd have to press second to get the pi up there in blue, plus 18. And so it would be 30.57. Now the pi button is in different places on the calculator, but you should definitely find the pi key as opposed to just using 3.14, because you'll get a different answer if you don't use the pi key. You'd get 30.56 rather than 30.566, and so it would round differently and your answer would be less accurate. Also, if you don't have a graphing calculator or a scientific calculator, there's a few different calculators, well, many different calculators available in the App Store. Here's one that I found on my iPad that I like. I got it in the App Store, and it is called, it's this one, calculator with the pound sign or the hashtag mark. It was free, so I can open that, and then you can do the same kind of calculation. 4 pi on this calculator is right here, plus 18, and then you press this big equals, not this little one, but the big one, and it'll give you the decimal approximation right there. This one also opens up in the right mode for trig problems, and so you could press, we can clear this and press the sign of 30, and it gives you the 0.5. That is a good check to make sure that it's in the right mode. You can see this little tiny degree up here is how you know it's in degree mode. You don't need that for this assignment, the trig part for this assignment, but it's still a nice calculator to have. All right, so back to this. One of the main reasons this topic is on this assignment here is for this situation where you have 14 over 4 pi. And if we simplify that, we could factor the 14 into 2 times 7 and factor the 4 pi into 2 times 2 times pi. And then the 2's will cancel, or a 2 from the top and the bottom will cancel. And so the exact form of my answer is 7 divided by 2 pi. Now you have to be very careful when you type that into the calculator. It is very likely that you will get the wrong answer. So you could go ahead and try it now. Pause the video and see what you get as a decimal approximation for that. And I will show you what I get if I do 7 divided by 2 pi. That is the wrong answer. So if you got that, you fell for the common error. It should be 7 divided by 2 pi. And you need to put parentheses so that the 2 and the pi are in the denominator of the fraction. And so the answer should be 1.11. And you should know that that's about the right answer, because 7 over 2 pi, if pi is about 3.1 or 3.14, then 2 times 3.14 is about 6, or 6.28, and 7 divided by 6 is definitely not 11. 7 divided by 6 is close to 1. So that's where that number comes from. If you were using the calculator from the iPad, it would be the same way. that you could get 7 divided by parenthesis 2 pi parenthesis. You've got to put the parenthesis in there. And then there's your 1.11. All right, so you should pause and try these two problems right now, but I'll go ahead and fill them in. But please pause the video and see if you can do them correctly. 36 pi over 4 plus 20 pi over 5. Remember, you can think of these as over 1. And then the exact answer will be 9 pi plus 4 pi, which is 13 pi. So you can type that into the calculator, just 13 times pi, and it should come out to be 40.84. And the next one, 10 divided by 12 pi. Both 10 and 12 have a factor of 2. So I can say 2 times 5 and 2 times 6 times pi. And the 2's will cancel. And so the exact answer is 5 over 6 pi. And then be careful when you type that in. You need to do 5 divided by parentheses 6 pi, which is 0.27. Since this is a 5, which is, if it's 5 or more, then this would round up. And I'm just kind of arbitrarily choosing to just round to 2 decimals, but you should do the same. 0.27. All right, so that's kind of a review of calculator skills, and now we're going to move on to the concept of the circumference of a circle. And the circumference of the circle is the length of the arc all around the circle. The formula for it is something that you should have learned back a few years ago, is the circumference is 2 pi r, and sometimes it can be described as pi times the diameter, which seems like a more simple formula, but we end up knowing the radius more often than the diameter, and so we end up using 2 pi r more frequently, but it is definitely correct to say that the circumference is pi times the diameter. To find the length of the arc from A to B, a portion of the circumference, not the whole thing, we'll use a portion of the circumference. And you will just take the measure of this arc and divide it by 360, and then multiply it times 2 pi r. So basically you end up taking a fraction of the circumference, and we'll see that in action down here in the examples. So let's try problem 1. It says to find the circumference of the circle, and you're given that the radius is 8, so I can say r equals 8, and the circumference is 2 pi r. So that means the circumference is 2 pi times 8. And 2 pi times 8 is just 16 pi. So the circumference is really 16 pi inches, since that's being measured in inches. And that's the exact answer. And then if you type 16 pi into the calculator, you will get the decimal approximation. 50.27. So if the radius of a circle is 8 inches, then the distance around the outside is 50.26 inches. 27 inches. All right, and number 2, they gave us that the diameter is 10. And so you could go ahead and use the fact that the circumference is equal to pi times the diameter, or the circumference is equal to pi times 10. which is usually written as 10 pi. It would also be inches, since that's inches. And 10 pi inches would be 31.41 inches. Number 3 is a little bit different. It's asking for the radius when you know that the circumference is exactly 9. So I know that C is equal to 9 and C is equal to 2 pi r. And so I can write the equation by taking the 9 and substituting it in for the C and get 9 is equal to 2 pi r. And then to get the radius, I just need to divide both sides by 2 pi. And so the answer to the radius is 9 over 2 pi. And here's where the skills from above come into play, because to get the decimal approximation of 9 divided by 2 pi, if I do that, it is wrong. 9 divided by 2 pi is about 9 divided by 6. It is not 14. Remember, 2 pi it's 6.28 and a whole bunch more decimals. But if just for estimating, you can think of pi as about 3. 2 times 3 is 6. 9 divided by 6 is not 14. So make sure that when you have to divide by 2 values in the denominator that you put parentheses. And if you're not sure how come that's happening, it's because when you do 9 divided by 2 times pi, you're really doing 9 divided by 2 multiplied by pi. And order of operations does division and multiplication from left to right. So the calculator is doing 9 divided by 2, which is 4.5, and then multiplying it by pi. So 9 divided by 2, getting 4.5, and then multiplying by pi gives me that 14 number. But what I really want is the 2 times the pi, and then 9 divided by that answer. And there's my 1.43, etc. So this should be 1.43 inches. So if the circle is 9 inches around, then the radius is 1.43 inches. All right, moving on to number 4, and this should be number 5. It says to find the measure of the length of arc AB. And this is missing a piece of information. Oh no, arc AB is this arc. And since this is going through the center, then this angle is 180 degrees. And so I'm looking for the measure of this whole arc. If I know that the measure of the arc is 180 degrees, then I'll just say 180 degrees out of the total 360 times 2 pi, and the r is 15. So that's 2 pi r right there. And it's kind of obvious here that basically we need half the circumference because we're using half the circle. But 180 degrees out of 360 degrees does simplify to a half. And 2 pi times 15 is 30 pi. And half of 30 pi is 15 pi. So the length of this arc, the semicircle, is 15 pi. And the length of the arc is approximately equal to 47.12 centimeters. This is centimeters also. All right, so this one is kind of obvious. You just take half of the circumference of the whole circle. When the central angle changes though, if we're looking for this arc, you'd have to be given that the central angle is 60 degrees, and then you would know that the arc is also 60 degrees. And so I'm not finding the length of the whole circle, I'm only finding a portion of it. So the length of AB is equal to 60 out of the total 360 times 2 pi times the radius. So 2 pi, and the radius in this case is 8. So 60 over 360, the zeros can divide each by 10 to get 6 over 36, but 6 over 36 is also 1/6. And so it's 1/6 of 16 pi, which is 16 pi over 6. And then if you divide each of those by 2, you will get 8 pi divided by 3 centimeters. And 8 pi divided by 3 on the calculator is 8 pi divided by 3. Now I don't need parentheses on this one because the calculator is going to do 8 times pi first and get that number, and then divide by 3. And since there isn't two quantities in the denominator, the order of operations will work out correctly. If you weren't sure, it wouldn't be wrong to put those in parentheses, but you'll get the same answer. So 8.38. All right, the second page of this document is the assignment for today, and that will be due before the next class for each of you. Thanks for watching. Good luck. Keep trying. I miss you. Sorry, I think I was off the window there for some of it. But there you can see the whole thing completed before I hit stop.